Now, when using the page builder for the first time, I kind of wish people told me some of the things of what not to do. So in this little session, I'm going to take you through my top 5 things of what never to do when using the page builder. Let's start with number 1, which is content that stretches the width of the screen. So I'm going to add a new row because we see these a lot. If you open up and add a full row width, I'm going to add content that goes across like this. Now you may think it looks great, it looks readable. The problem is it won't for your user, and they'll typically read the first maybe one line and then they're going to give up. It goes back to the same principles as why our magazines or newspapers have short, skinny columns. It's to make things readable for them, that people can digest small bits of content and it encourages them to read more. If we see content that stretches over the whole of the whole of the row, people will actually stop reading it. And so the great content you've got in there will just never be read. A great alternative to this will just be adding a simple 2-column row to it. So you add 2 columns here. I can add some content and I'm going to grab some of this content, maybe this one here, and add to the next bit. Now, one of the things you can do is just have like a nice little heading, or what sometimes you can do if I split out these rows is I could actually maybe make this, if it was shorter, probably maybe this one. Here we go. I could add a little bit of hierarchy to it. Just go into advanced, attributes, larger. And here what we're going to see is that this is going to show them the hierarchy to a must read and then continue on. So a much better way to do long form content. The other one that I'm a really big fan of is if you want people to read a lot of things, use the accordion block. If you open up here and type in accordion, add this in here, you can now add a title, say read more. And you can add all the content that you like into this little section. That's going to present itself much better than having content that stretches the full width of the page. And using the accordion block gives people a choice of whether they want to keep reading more content as well. So that's my tip number 1. Tip number 2 is odd padding and margin settings. And this one is a huge common one that we see all the time. The first thing is what people do is they go into, say, the image and they're like, I don't like where it sits at the moment, so I want to change that. And they'll go into the, say, image settings, go to advanced, and use the little slider to sort of move the image where they want to. The reason this is not great practice is the way it looks now is only for this screen size. We use different screen sizes, maybe a large monitor, a 13-inch laptop, a mobile phone, a tablet. And if you just think it looks good for you on that, the reality is it's most likely not going to look good on those other devices. And so there are way better ways to do this than what you're actually wanting to achieve. So typically what the encouragement is don't use padding and margin settings on blocks, unless you need to do little things of like spacing in between here we did for the buttons. But instead focus on the column settings or the row settings. If I wanted this section to be up a little bit to overlap, I'd probably just target the column setting instead. And I could adjust some of the top margin or bottom margin available. One of the things also to avoid as much as possible is the use of padding. Typically you don't really need it, and so I don't really encourage it. Most of the campaigns were built for hundreds of clients. We rarely ever use padding on these things, so maybe just a little bit of top margin or bottom margin settings is going to be enough for you. Whatever you do, don't get in the habit of being like, it doesn't kind of look right, so what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of top margin sort of, and that looks right for me. Try to be consistent in all the things you're doing because your end product will then look really cohesive for your users as well. All right, next one is using columns instead of blocks. Now, often what we do see is that people want to put, say content into 3 different columns. And so they'll rightly so just grab the 3-column row. And from this, they'll grab a heading. They might just grab some text. They might grab an image. And they'll do this for, say, like each of them here. what I recommend instead, because when you do this, there's just a whole bunch of other settings that you need to be worried about. You now need to change your margin settings so it appears really well on mobile. And then maybe there's other things that aren't quite right for you. In order to provide consistency, I'd recommend something like this, using the full row, and then use like the feed block instead, which, as I said, I'm a massive fan of. This thing is really, really flexible and I can do all sorts of different things with it. And rather than adding a 3-column structure, I can just use the feed block for what I want. Another encouragement as well is that if you are actually using a 3-column or a 4-column row, which is totally fine, you can totally do. Instead of actually using the 3-column here or the 4-column here, I maybe suggest using these ones down the bottom, for example. The only reason, it gives you a little bit more flexibility when using margin settings, because you can set the top margin and the bottom margin for the top row and the bottom row a little bit easier as well. So rather than using these ones, I typically would use these ones. It might just save you a bit more time and trouble on your spacing options. The other one I want to have a quick focus on is adding images with text as the background. Now, as you can see here, we have an image and we have the text to the left. In web design, everything is on its own. If you have an image, it's just an image. If you have text, it's just text. And so what we do find sometimes what people will do is they may have an image that they have developed out in Canva, and they'll add a new row. They'll go into the background image and add that image in that has a whole bunch of text on there, such as like a poster or something like that. The reason why a big encouragement to avoid doing that is that it's not going to display on mobile well at all. And when most of your viewers are on mobile, what it's going to do is going to shrink the image down to 100% of that width. That may make the text absolutely illegible for someone depending on the size of it. So a big encouragement is don't use text as backgrounds, images with text as backgrounds or as images. Always do them separately. If I want an image and I want some text, make it work separately. Now the last one, which is a little bit important and kind of for sort of advanced users when you get really stuck into it, is that you can actually, for each of these content blocks, create different experiences for someone on desktop view or on a mobile view. So say, for example, if I cloned this row and instead on the mobile view, I wanted this one to change to say this one, I can actually go into my row settings, advanced. On the desktop, I can hit show, tablet show, but on mobile, I'm going to hide that one. And then on this row, I can go into and go on the desktop, I want it to disappear. Tablet disappear, but I want to keep it on mobile. Do note, I can now see it because in my little icons up here, I have show content for all devices, which is important. Now this is going to have the desktop view and it's also going to have the mobile view, which is really great and a great way to do it. But sometimes what we see people do is they attack each of these blocks. And so they'll instead grab this one here. And over time, they'll have a row, but in this row, there's different little things that some are for mobile, some are for desktop. Now, if you can really keep track of it, it's great to do. But most of the time you can't keep track of it. And eventually the page looks very complicated and messy. So one of the things I'd encourage you to do is use rows instead. Create a different row for mobile and a different row for desktop if you did want different experiences in those, because it may just save you some time and trouble. So there are a few little good tips, but there's so much more on our support guides and we're there to help if you get stuck.